Psychology. This is Unit 1, Part 3. Today we're going to be looking at different perspectives, and that is the way in which we look at the human mind and how we decide what is important. All right? I'll give you some examples. All right? So mind-body dualism. Psychologists who follow this perspective have the belief that the mind is a spiritual entity not subject to physical laws that govern the body. So as far as they're concerned, the mind and the body are very separate. The body has physical laws that we have to follow, but the mind is not. It's a spiritual entity separate from the body. Okay? Monoism. This is the exact opposite of mind-body dualism. And to this one, the mind and body are one. So in this case, their idea is the mind can be studied. There is structuralism, and that's the analysis of the mind in terms of its basic elements. So they're going to look at how it is, built. The different lobes and all the biological parts in there. And so in some cases, they would consider, they would be very interested in how dissections of the brain had gone in the past, because we're going to break it down. What's it made of? How does this influence? Chemicals in the brain and things like that. Functionalism studies the function of the consciousness rather than its elements. So we're looking kind of like at the whole, all right? The psychodynamic perspective. This is probably the most famous of them, all right? Because this is going to come from a German psychiatrist, Sigmund Freud, and under the psychodynamics perspective, searches for the causes of behavior within the inner workings of our personality, emphasizing the role of unconscious processes. Freud thought there were always things in our mind that were subconscious or unconscious. We didn't really know about them, but they have a huge effect on our personality, right? Out of that comes what we call psychoanalysis, and that's the analysis of internal and primarily unconscious psychological forces. So you sit down with a psychiatrist or a psychologist that's doing this, and they're going to ask you questions, and they're going to try to figure out what's going on that you don't know about. Okay. Like I said, Sigmund Freud, he's considered the father of psychoanalytic thought. That's a picture of him there. He's the one that everybody likes to talk about. He had some really interesting theories. Right? And they were based on the idea that humans have inborn sexual and aggressive drives that are punished in childhood. All right? We learn to fear them and become anxious when we are aware of their presence. So we learn to fear them. That's where it becomes subconscious or unconscious. They're there, but we, kind of ignore them. All right? And if we become aware of them or if they start to manifest themselves, that's when anxiety kicks in, or it can cause anxiety. He also talked about defense mechanisms, psychological techniques that help us cope with anxiety and the pain of traumatic experiences. So when something bad happens to us, these defense mechanisms, we're not aware of them. They kick in to help protect us. Okay? Here's some examples, all right? On the left column under mechanism, those are the different types of defense mechanisms he talked about: repression, denial, projection, displacement, regression, and sublimation. Right? And then he gives descriptions. So regression is an unconscious mechanism employed by the ego to keep disturbing or threatening thoughts from becoming conscious. Example, during the Oedipus complex, aggressive thoughts about the same-sex parents are repressed. Okay, and that's something that he also talked about with small children. You have thoughts that you don't like, so you repress them and pretend they're not there. Okay? Denial involves blocking external events from awareness. If some situation is just too much to handle, the person just refuses to experience it. For example, smokers may refuse to admit to themselves that smoking is bad for their health. We'll just deny it. All right? Projection involves individuals attributing their own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, and motives to another person. You might hate someone, but your superego tells you that such hatred is unacceptable. You can solve the problem by believing that they hate you too. All right? Displacement, satisfying an impulse with a substitute object. Someone who is frustrated by his or her boss at work may go home and kick the dog. All right? Please don't kick your dog. This is a regression is a movement back in psychological time when one is faced with stress. A child may begin to suck their thumb again or wet the bed when they need to spend some time in the hospital, because they're afraid, so they regress and act a little younger. Right? And then sublimation, satisfying an impulse with a substitute object in a socially acceptable way. Sports is an example. All right, you put out, we put our emotions into it like aggression, but it's constructive. And you're really angry, you want to hit something, so you dress up for football and you go tackle someone. That's sublimation. Okay. Modern psychotherapists downplay the sexual and aggressive motives and now tend to focus more on the early family relationships when it comes to psychoanalysis.